Welcome, everybody, to Unfair Sports, where we're talking OU football, college football, and sports in general, and taking a pensive approach to the sports conversation. I am your host, Jay. Thank you all for tuning in here on YouTube or Facebook or even Twitter. While you're there, please hit the like and subscribe button, as well as rate, review, and give us 5 stars on the podcast. If you don't, just give us 5 anyway and gift it. So, got a special guest with us today, my boy Kchris with a K from the Horns Down podcast. Kchris, let the people know where they can find you and all about you.
Hey guys, obviously you see it on the screen at Kchris with a K. Definitely give me a follow on Twitter, but you can find at us at the Horns Down Pod. Excuse me, mouthful right now. But anyways, you can find us at the Horns Down Pod. You can find us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and you can also find us on YouTube at the Horns Down Podcast, right? So we hate on Texas an awful lot, but we also talk a lot of OU football and some other things around the national landscape in the world of college football. So definitely give us a follow, a like, subscribe, or whatever. You won't regret it.
Heck yeah, always great content, always a fun time, and thank you for joining me today. We want to go ahead and preview the Iowa State game, as well as talk a little bit about this drama going on with the Aggies. Like, I'm a little thrown off by what's going on with them, and I've got a theory for you Sooner fans, a reason for you guys to potentially be excited. So I'm hoping you all stick around for that. We should be around for probably about 45 minutes or whatnot, but leave a comment, jump in the comments, and let us know what you guys think about this Iowa State game coming up this weekend. We are, of course, stoked about it. We expect big things, so we're going to jump right into the meat. Iowa State, Oklahoma. OU will be traveling to Ames, Iowa this week to compete. Kchris, let's start off. We'll go offense and defense, matching up or whatnot. Tell the people, how do you feel about going to Iowa State with our offense versus their defense, since that's basically what they're best at?
I actually feel really good about the matchup.
Okay.
I think really to be quite frank with you, it all depends on Dillon Gabriel. We go as he goes, right? So
fair.
What do I mean by that? Let's just really break it down. This 3-3-5 defense that they're going to run has been pretty stout. And hey, look, statistically, they're always going to be a really good defense, especially in the Big 12. They're 3-3-5. They know what they're doing. It's kind of like just, hey, I'm not going to say that they're super talented on the defensive side of the ball, but they know their stuff, and they have some guys that are pretty good and top guys in the Big 12, rightfully so. But we've seen this defense basically, at times the offense, a lot of offenses have gotten the better of it, but that's because the quarterbacks are able to actually take advantage of the 3-3-5 and what it presents. And you have a healthy and a consistent run game, right? So when it comes to Dillon Gabriel, are you going to get the automatic, the sharp, the Dillon Gabriel that you had against Kansas, right? Or are you going to get the Dillon Gabriel that has been, overthrowing some guys and kind of throwing it to some windows that are a little bit tighter and taking those coverage sacks, right? Is he going to be decisive like he was? Is he going to come out there and just let it rip, or is he going to be hesitant and reluctant to kind of throw to some guys, and help the offense really kind of get that rhythm that they need? Because it's going to really start with him. I think that Levy is going to call a great game, but like I said, it's all about the run game. Run game with the offensive line has to be able to control that line of scrimmage. And I mean, if they're going to be running 3-3-5, you should be able to dominate those 3 down linemen, right? I think the biggest thing, I went back and watched the Texas game, and Quinn Ewers made some great throws, man. He threw some guys open, and then Xavier Worthy and some other guys, they just found those spots. But I look for a guy like Drake Stoops, a guy like Theo Weiss possibly as well, to be able to sit right there in the middle of that zone and help Dillon Gabriel and allow him to really pick apart and kind of make them, make adjustments on the fly. But like I said, the run game has to be consistent and healthy this weekend for us to really, can take control of this game.
No, you're right. And I'm looking at like the stats and stuff. So like on the defensive side, Iowa State is the top in yard total defense. They're only giving up like 289 yards a game, which is crazy how good that is, while only giving up 105 rushing yards statistically, and what, 184 passing yards. So in conference, they are the best. They're the only team giving up less than, I guess we could say, 105 on run, because Baylor's only giving up 108. But on the pass side, they're the only team giving up less than 200 yards. So OU going out there and scoring and getting those passing yards, it's going to be critical in order to break that 3-3-5, which is even more fascinating. Everybody has been complaining about OU doing their 3-3-5. And we'll talk about our defense in a minute, but that's what Iowa State runs. And they seem to see some success. Now, not a lot this year, because their biggest issue is their offense is just not that good. And we'll talk about them more. But on the defensive side, for us, for Oklahoma, as you mentioned, Dylan Gabriel's got to get going early, and we've got to just run it down everybody's throat. We're the third best run game in the conference, as well as the third best just offense in general right now statistically. We put up numbers, and we can do it. The question is going to be, will we do it? And so I can see it. If we do more Eric Gray, I don't know if Major is back yet. I need to look it up. I haven't seen any updates on him whatsoever. But as long as we, impose our will on them, I think we can get past their stout defense and actually do something.
Yeah. They play really well. I'm not saying that we have a Bijan Robinson in the backfield, but Eric Gray has been one of the best backs, not only in the Big 12, but in my opinion, kind of in the country. He's been consistent. And then also Barnes has came on. The game is really slowing down for him. And then you look at Marcus Majors, if you can get him back, then that's a welcome addition too, right? So the whole thing is that in my opinion, which is 3-3-5, but in Iowa State in particular, I think the perimeter is kind of something that you want to attack, right? Because often, I mean, they're doing a lot of different things in that 3-3-5. They're not just running like a 3-3-5, kind of a matchup zone and different things like that. That's what it's there for. But they're matching up with a lot of guys. They're manning some guys on the outside or whatnot, and they're telling you, okay, well, you can't throw 50-50 balls against this team. Okay, you just can't. You got to be precise, and you got to know exactly what you're going to do. So I see us being able to utilize that quick passing scheme and being able to win some of those matchups. But like I said, if you're able to have a healthy and consistent run game against this defense, which is possible, you're going to be fine. And to my point with the whole Bijan Robinson thing is just simply this right here. Is like, look, Bijan and Roshan were able to move the ball on the ground against them. They were able to, have those one-on-ones like Eric Gray and Barnes are going to have, because that's our scheme, So you're just looking to be able to capitalize on those one-on-one whenever it presents itself, when those opportunities present itself. So I'm excited about it. I think it's a good matchup, and I think it plays in the hands of somebody like Dylan Gabriel, because if your offensive line does what they need to do and they keep that pocket clean, Dylan Gabriel is a good enough quarterback to get you over the hump and be extremely efficient against a mostly zone-based scheme, right?
Yeah, no, so, you're right. Yeah. And then looking at the numbers, Texas ran for like 171 yards in that game against Iowa State. So, they can do it. Like, we have all the tools for that. The key thing is going to be accuracy on Dylan Gabriel's side. Now, we have some of the faster receivers in the country. Don't get it twisted. They are Mims and all of them. All we've got to do is get them out there in space and get out there deep, and I think that we'll be fine in that capacity.
Force them to get out of their comfort zone. Force them, quiet that crowd down, but you got to sustain drives too. That's another big key. Got to sustain drives. It can't be they're going to want to take the air out of the ball. They're not going to want you to have all those possessions that you've had leading up to this game or whatever. They want to take the ball out of your hands, and they want to make sure that you don't get it back. They'll turn this into a time of possession game if they need to, because we'll obviously talk about their offensive woes, but at the same time, they're able to still put up some numbers. But this isn't going to be your typical shootout game, because Iowa State knows that if they get in a shootout with OU's good enough to just outscore them and win that way.
We win a shootout. we win a shootout every time. And that's
Yeah.
the one, like you said, that's the one thing they do not want to happen. And looking at the games that they played this year, they have, for the most part, avoided it, except for against Baylor, and that's when they lost. And well, technically they lost all of their Big 12 games so far, and it's just more so their offense is so inept. And like I said, we'll get on them in just a minute, but I want to start off focusing on what our offense needs to do. So line play needs to be solid. I think if anything too is our wide receivers have to block better in this game. I think that was one of the problems we saw in the TCU game initially. We weren't blocking very well. Same thing in Kansas State. We weren't blocking very well down the field. And you could tell because the runs kept stalling. And then when we started seeing good blocking from the wide receivers, we started breaking for these 8 and 10-yard runs. Like Eric Gray right now averages 7.2 yards a carry. Before this past weekend, he was the top dude when it came to that in the country. Now he's about like 5 because of last week. But as long as we get that down the field blocking, we could definitely put some numbers up against them. So okay.
Oh, let me. I got just 2 more points. So I think I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you about the blocking from the perimeter guys. I think for me, it's about winning those one-on-one battles in the interior. I think when you're, because I think you're going to see a lot of inside game to kind of test them early and see if are those linebackers going to be ready for what's coming at them, right? Are they going to be gap sound? Are they going to have the gap integrity that we're going to talk about here in just a few minutes? So I think that's kind of the thing for me. Can you win those battles? Because I think that once Eric Gray, look, I don't necessarily think Eric Gray has the top end speed to take it home, but he does have the ability to make you miss on those tackles. He's elusive enough to do that, right?
I mean, I think that's his strength. That's been his strength going through those holes. Is he is very much elusive and he can hit the hole properly and go. I think Barnes is more of your guy that's going to outrun most people.
And then Sawchuk next year is hopefully that is the home run hitter, right? But I think that I also my second point would be I'd like to see less screens. If it's something that works, then let's use it. But I like to see less, wide receiver screens and see us kind of, I'd rather see a lot more hitch and curls or whatever, kind of and move and slants too, like we've been using, but kind of use short that plays to kind of to open up that defense and kind of make them second guess. Because I think the bubble screens, the different things like that can work. But I just would like to see a mix of that. But I trust Lebby, and Lebby is coming off of arguably the best game that he's called as the offensive coordinator for Oklahoma.
Yes,
and we got to see that offense really, really flourish against Kansas. Obviously, there were some woes with the turnovers or whatnot, but I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and with those woes, the funny thing is that score was deceiving. That score was not what actually was for that game if you actually watched it. We were pretty dominant through most of it. Defensively, we weren't as where we were, but we'll see what that looks like. All right, let's jump on the defensive side. So defensively, Oklahoma's going up against a quarterback, Hunter Deckers, who's not been very good this year, like at all. Their offense has struggled to really do much. I mean, the Iowa game told me everything. Iowa tries their hardest not to score points. Like, that's their whole goal in the game, is to see how many punts they can do and see how many points their defense can get. Like, they want as many Iowa touchdowns as possible. And if you don't know what an Iowa touchdown is, that's 2 safeties and a field goal. That is what it seems like they're aiming to do, is to set records for not scoring touchdowns. They could only get 10 points against them. And then that goes into the Ohio State game when Iowa played them, and they dropped a 50 bomb on them. In that game, Iowa had allowed only 59 points all season long. Ohio State scored 54 by themselves. So in this one, Iowa State offensively should not be able to move the ball on us very well. We should be able to fill those gaps. We should be able to do something. There's some updates that I saw in an OU Insider from Brandon Drum. And have you seen these updates yet?
I haven't seen them yet.
All right, so here's some player updates for everybody that wants to know what's going on. If you're not a VIP, congratulations, you got some free information. So It looks like Billy Bowman could potentially be back. I don't think he's 100. He doesn't look like he's 100%, but he's maybe around 75, 80, or at most 90. But he has been practicing this week, and they're expecting him to be back for the game. So there's a chance that he may be rotating in, and we'll see some Bowman. I saw that Damon Harmon is potentially back as well. But we may see more Robert Spears-Jennings, which I want to see more Robert Spears-Jennings. I want to see him, and I want to see Jaden Rowe, but I don't think we'll see Rowe this season. We'll see Rowe next year. It looks like Ethan Downs is a full go. He was in concussion protocol, but it looks like it was mild and precautionary, if anything. So we'll get him also coming back. And outside of that, with this updates, they looked more spry in practice last week. They looked like they actually had their legs. And the assumption is that the fatigue of prepping for all the games coming up to the bye week is what wore them out. Kansas game, they took a break and they looked a lot fresher. But that 3-game stretch of losses was because of the work that they were putting in. Now, I've had some people jump in my comments and make statements about that, like, oh, what's the issue with that? Why can't they, work hard and be prepared? Well, Bama, Clemson, and Georgia, these are the type of things they do to be prepared, but they do it for years. So it's something that the players are adapted to. And I think the problem is that because this was these players' first kind of summer, well, yeah, I guess you say first spring and summer actually working in this regimen, that they just weren't prepared. Their bodies weren't prepared for it. So it was something that they had to build up to. And I think that's honestly why Bama and them don't really play freshmen. Clemson, same thing with like Georgia. They don't play very many freshmen specifically because of that. Their bodies aren't ready for the hard work they have to put in to be in shape for it. And it looks like they're getting that point. So that bye week, the way that it reads from Brandon Drum has helped them not only physically, but mentally. They're more fresh. The legs are good. They're running around. They said they were around practice looking like they did before the Nebraska game. And so if that's the case, I'm hoping we can get something big out of them.
And hopefully that carries on. Look. Okay. This is a work in progress. And nobody thought it would take this long. But this is going to be a work in progress.
Oh, yeah.
But 100%. I believe that BV not only is the right guy for the job, for the task of going to the SEC and chasing getting number 8, but I also just believe in this team. I think there's still a lot of talent. I think we're still, to be honest with you, we haven't played like it. I still think that we're the most talented team in the Big 12.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's levels to this.
Yeah,
it's levels to this.
Adding to what Robert Black says here, that bye week should, really helping them. They got killed spending the whole game on the field in Texas. You're right. Especially going to Dallas 2 weekends in a row in that Texas heat and literally playing all the time on the defensive side because the offense, I get attacked all the time in comments. Every video I talk about this, but our offense sometimes is too fast. And this is an issue when you don't have depth. And I think that's our biggest problem right now. We've talked about this numerous times. We had a mass exodus of players. We're still rebuilding the roster. But when you don't have depth, your players will get exhausted. The human body has its limits.
This has been like a 10-month process. So look, I'm not giving up on this year. I'm gonna be real with you. We'll talk about this later. I have OU doing damn well the rest of the way out.
Same.
Yeah. So going to the defensive side of the ball, man, it's key that we get those guys back. I kind of see them holding out on Bowman. I think that they'll probably take this week, one more week as a precaution, and then bring him back as slowly as they can. I think the same thing about Davian Harmon. I'd like to know where the hell Justin Harrington has gone, but at the same time, I'm really excited about what I saw in some of the things, not everything now, but some of the things that I saw in the Kansas game. I think that if you, with a week of practice, with a week of good rest and good practices, solid practices in there, I think that, hey, man, look, this defense can come out there and actually do something. It's all about getting stops.
No, you're right. You're right. 100%.
Yeah. With this offense, look, okay, so Iowa State, as bad as some people say their offense is, and I know, look, at times they've been bad, but I use the beta sample off of a common opponent, Texas, and I look and see what they did in that game. Those wide receivers catch a lot. They catch a lot, and they catch stuff over the middle. They catch some contested things as well. I mean, obviously we talk about the blown call with the targeting or whatnot, but hell, if Xavier Hutchinson doesn't fall somehow and drop that pass, that's probably that could have been game. That could have been a nail in the coffin against Texas.
Right.
But hey, Xavier Hutchinson is that guy. He's in my book, I think he's top 5 wide receiver in the Big 12. Easily. I think that but the guy that I'm looking at and I'm saying, hey, we can't let him be a hero this game is a guy that was tearing Texas up, which is that Knoll kid, the Jalen Knoll.
Yeah, Jaden Knoll.
Yeah, the small like slot back or not slot back, but slot wide receiver. I mean, he was killing Texas. He was all over the place. I mean, he was running wide open on some plays, and then on that one slant that he took, I mean, he beat his guy, and then he just made a play and outran him for the touchdown. So guys like that, we can't let them go out there and play hero ball. We can't let some guy. We can't focus so much on Xavier Hutchinson, and then we forget about a guy like Knoll and just let him just sneak out. And then hell, he's got 8 catches for 173 yards and 2 touchdowns. You get what I'm saying? So we can't let them play hero ball. I really like what I see from the corners lately, or at least in that Kansas game. I think C.J. Colton, something's up with him. Something's up with him.
Hey, and I was going to say that. Now, this is a good question from Jimmy. Will Woody Washington play safety or corner? To be honest, I hope he plays safety in the Bowman role and rotate with Bowman, that those two kind of rotate with each other. I want C.J. Colton in that corner. I want more of him. 6-footer. He's got to last 2 interceptions. Let's play more of him. I also want to see more Robert Spears-Jennings and a lot of Gentry Williams as well. I'm hoping we rotate those safeties a little bit more. And it feels like the players are starting to understand this scheme a lot better. The Kansas game makes me feel like that, especially once they were arrested. But if anything, go back to that vanilla defense we were doing before and start rotating those young guys.
That's what you saw in the Kansas game. It was more of the simplified defense. They were running a 4-man front for a good portion of the game. We got into trouble with some of the zone concepts. I think that we have a problem running zone concepts. I'm just going to be honest with you.
And it's probably because nobody understands them yet. I think that's probably what it is. The complexity of them and the way you're supposed to cover certain spots, it's tough. And I think that that's where that issue is. And I agree with you 100% on that. So why not play more white? Or let's jump in some of these comments real quick. I want to see more Canic too. Now, this was stated by Venables in one of the interviews after the first game when Canic got that fumble and recovered it. He said, hey, Canic is still learning linebacker. He doesn't know what he's doing yet. And I think that that's a statement along the lines of the defensive scheme that they're trying to play. And that makes sense. So whenever you start seeing these players looking like they're out of place and stuff, I get it now. I get what he means. And he said that we were far away after the first 3 wins. He said, no, we've got, after the Kansas State game, actually, our boy Ty Hayes at Around the Table Sports, check out his content, fantastic stuff. He made mention of that. He said Venables had said in the post game interviews or whatnot, he said we still got a ways to go. And you could see it when everybody started looking lost. And so I think that's the reason why you don't see a lot of Canic yet. Mm-hmm. He's getting more and more games, but he's not – he still has to learn the position and getting in the right spots. But the dude's a monster. I think seeing him and Eric McCarthy next year, it's going to be gross.
That's the whole thing, man, is look at it like this, okay? And we talked about it with Ty. I think this 3-3-5 kind of tells us what we need to know, if you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, no,
because the 3-3-5, what is a 3-3-5? Who runs the 3-3-5? Lesser talented teams.
On the defensive side of the ball, yeah.
On the defensive side of the ball.
It's to make a team run the ball on you.
Yeah.
Unless you've got big linebackers. And I think that's where we're going. We're getting these bigger linebackers that can fill those holes and stop the run a lot better. But no, you're right. It is. And to be honest, I think the other issue you run into with the 3-3-5, and this is kind of why I kind of advocate and understand why they're doing it, is when your offense goes as fast as ours does, you're going to play a lot of defense. A lot of defense. I mean, we are still in the 128, 29 range. I got to look at the actual number, but we're at the bottom of the country in time of possession of a game. So that means our defense is living on the field. And that means that they're constantly running around. And so until you get that depth to prepare for it, we're going to run into some problems.
But the problem is, here's the real problem, okay? The real problem is that we haven't had a great payoff with the offense yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because I don't know.
Well, no, it's 3-part. Look, it's 3-part on this, okay? With the offense, yes, they run a high tempo offense. They're trying to score, right? If you marry that with a defense that is able to get stops or key stops, like 3 or consecutive stops, 2 or 3 consecutive stops, and you're scoring, you're up. You get what I'm saying? You're up, and you're up big, and you're comfortable. And then what does Levy really want to do? Levy wants to pound the ball. He wants to run. Look, if you go to look at the 2 coaches that he's coached for or coached with, Heupel and Kiffin. They're running our offenses. Basically, they're running the same schemes with some new wrinkles or whatever the case may be with some new guys that they have, but they're still running similar schemes. And you're able to see what they're doing in year 2 and year 3 and all the rest of the stuff of those offenses, right? So it's going to take time for us to marry that with a good defense. And that's why I say we're still a work in progress, and we haven't really seen a great payoff with that. And I mean, that's what I'm getting at with that.
Okay. No, and I get you there. I get you what you're saying there. And I'll talk about that a little bit more on the other side a little bit later. But let's talk about this. Another question from the commenters. Prime time. What's good, man? All right. What do you think about guys like Freeman getting reps before Gibson? Okay. So I like Gavin Freeman, and I like him in there as a change of pace, especially because he can dip. Dude's got some speed. I want more Gibson specifically because he can also stretch the field, and he's so tall. Now, he did have a couple of drops this season that made me scratch my head. I think it was the freshman piece on it. But I think I do want to see a little bit more Gavin Freeman and then throw Gibson a little bit more on the outside later in the games. But I do think I want to see more Freeman actually playing right now. I think I get you totally with that.
I think Freeman, and that's a part of it. Why, like, especially with us watching on TV and everything. And I mean, primetime, they actually go to some of the games too. But sometimes you get lost in translation. Those guys are actually out there. It's just that their run plays or different things or whatever. They're giving some guy a spell, right? So a guy like Freeman's just making plays. I mean, when he's on the field, he's making plays. And a guy like Gibson, you're trying to get that engine going. It's just it's taking a little bit longer to get him going. But I'm telling you now, that kid right there, if he sticks with it, when one of the things we're missing, right? I feel like we have a really, really good wide receiver core.
Yeah.
But when we're able to get a guy to get a guy like Petaway and Evans and get that speed in there, you see those different packages with those. With how Levy really wants to go, you see a lot of those multiple, you see a lot of the different type of wide receivers where you got a speedy wide receiver here, you got your possession wide receiver there.
Yeah.
It's going to pan out. It's going to look really good. But that's what I'm saying. We just haven't seen that payoff yet because we haven't seen this offense in my mind, put together 2 consistently good offensive games.
We haven't seen them in a row. That's the thing about it. It's been sporadic when seeing that. And so right here, I get you, Robert, on this with Lincoln Riley and how he did it with the balanced offense. Our problem is that if you notice when we run the ball, we get like 8 to 10 yards per game still too. So that's the issue when I talk about the speed is that we actually pick up a lot of yards and then we'll miss passes or drop passes and then we got to punt it. But usually when we run it, we're getting a lot of yards. So it's not that we're not running successfully because we are. Eric Gray's averaging 7.2 yards a carry and he's 24th in the country in yards. This 22nd in the country in yards this season while still having the bye week. So we played less games and he's still up there in the top 25 in yards this season. We're putting up numbers and they're going fast. It's just we're going so fast that The offense and stuff isn't keeping up. But
And
here's
like I
one.
said, when you can't sustain drives, and that's one of the problems is when you can't sustain drives, you're doing you're basically going out there and not even getting 1 or 2 first downs. You're off the field. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, right.
it,
Right. So on this one, and Key Lawrence is one. He seemed to have fallen out of grace with the staff. That's the reason why I think he's not playing. Is just in my vision out there. He's missed some holes. I watched a couple of videos and watched some of the 3 losses. I watched some of those games, and I remember watching him, and it looked like he was missing some holes that he should have not missed. And I think he's kind of fallen out of grace with the staff. At least it looks like it. Is the reason why we haven't seen much of him. Now, overall, I think he's one of our better safeties when he's on his game, but he wasn't on his game. And it may have been fatigue. It may have been other things, but it doesn't seem like he was really on it. Now, let's talk recruiting real quick before we jump
the Kansas game, hell, that game should change a lot of people's minds around the staff then, if that's the case. Because I mean, Key was key.
He was key. He was key in that game. He came back. He came back the way he did. He got that rest and showed up.
Yeah.
All right. So here's a good one. Jimmy mentioned this. We were talking about Anthony Evans a minute ago and that he might visit Georgia. So I've heard and read that he is. And I saw a note from, I think, Brandon Drum or someone mentioned that the staff knows about it and he is. I saw that Evans also tweeted out that he's a Sooner, Boomer or something, and he retweeted, coming up next season what they're supposed to look like with all the players that's being added. So it looks like he's still all in, but he's going to the Georgia game. Probably check it out because it is Georgia, Tennessee. I mean, who wouldn't? If I didn't have to be here, I planned on going to that game because I wanted to go to the Alabama one, but I had to work the Tennessee Alabama. But that one I wanted to, but my kid has a soccer tournament, so I can't travel to it. What's good, Ty? Thanks for pulling up, man. I would get Gray working in the pass game. Yeah. So as y'all all know, I put out a video with Ty how I had to apologize to Eric Gray for the way he's performed, and because I doubted him and I shouldn't have. Yeah, the dude is he's proven me wrong. So let's jump into the next topic though. Yeah, we went 30 minutes on the game, so we got offense, we talked defense. We'll probably circle back around, but what the hell's going on with Texas A&M? I had a couple people ask me this in some videos, and people make comments like, "Hey man, what's going on with this team, man? They're imploding." Did you see that video that Jimbo Fisher did recently?
Yeah, I saw
his
that
interview. So I posted it in our group chat or whatnot, but for y'all that didn't watch it, I would pull it up, but I don't even feel like trying to figure it out right now. But basically, it went like this. Jimbo Fisher basically said that that why would guys want to go to school teams that are winning? Because they probably want to get to play. So they should, they're going to want to come there because they're going to see an opportunity to play today. And I totally get that. I'm not going to even knock him for it, even though I'm laughing, because I said something similar about what's going on with Oklahoma with our 3 losses, that a lot of people were terrified that players were going to jump ship off of our commitments because of that. And I was like, no, I think they're licking their chops saying, ooh, I can start as a freshman. And that's exciting for some players, especially those that are trying to build their name, 1, and 2, helping kind of with a retool like we're doing here. When you go to Alabama, you can play 1 year and become a first-round draft pick. I mean, you only need a year. Sometimes Clemson can do that. Georgia has those tendencies. I've seen that at Ohio State. We've seen that here. Players play 1 year and boom, they, end up being propelled. But you also need to have something on your resume if you're someone that people aren't paying attention to. And I think that if you wreak havoc on a team that's bad, you probably will. But outside of that, A&M just got issues everywhere, internally, externally. I had a friend send me a note. I'm not going to read this note. I'm not going to talk too deep about this note, but it sounds like a lot of players are getting suspended. A lot of players are talking about leaving. A lot of players are talking about decommitting. I don't know about the speculation on it. But Chris, what the hell you think is going on in A&M, man? What is going on?
So let's say this, okay? Let's do this, right? Jameis Winston. I think that's a good starting point. Is Jameis Winston, right? We've seen Jimbo have some issues in the past with players or whatnot, and I think we all just thought that, okay, well, Jameis is funny, it's cool, it's kiddish or whatever, but just a little bit, he's just being immature, right?
Yep.
Wasn't anything well, he had that one situation, but we won't talk about that. But at the same time, Jimbo stuck with him, got him through it. It didn't seem like it was a cancer to the team. The team was still playing and everything. But I guess that was just a small taste of what's happening now with all the collection of prima donnas that he may have within the locker room, right? I don't know. It's crazy to really think that we're here talking about this, but I mean, I think I said it to you and Ty one day. He's pretty much the college football John Calipari to me, because he's getting these super, super talented classes. But you got to think, Calipari is messing around and having like, okay, I gotta, have 10 to 15, freshmen or like at least 8 or 9 freshmen on my team. But now he's dealing with upwards of 20, 25, or however many he's taking on those classes, and those problems linger. And he's taking on a lot of character issue guys as well, guys who have a lot of character issues coming out of high school and that are noted for that, So I don't know whether it's just poor management from the top, but it looks like it looks like they're in the middle, in the interim or whatever, in the intermediate. It looks like that's where the problem is to me, is that there's just no structure there. And I mean, I think that's what we've heard about David Hicks with him possibly rethinking his commitment to A&M, is that there's just a lot of internal things that are going on outside of this whole players getting suspended, all the rest of this stuff. So, I mean, it's the product on the field doesn't look great, but these things are under a microscope now, seeming that they aren't winning, right? Because these problems would just be kind of like, okay, is it really true? Is it really happening? Blah, blah, blah. I do believe it's happening. But this isn't anything that I think you, Ty, myself, anybody that's in our group chat or anybody on this chat right now would say they didn't foresee happening. One, you have a notoriously 8-5 coach. So, of course, there's going to be some seasons where you're just losing. Money doesn't cure everything. And then 3, you're bringing in all these freshmen and all these highly touted guys. He's going to have the same problems that some people are having at other at other schools, because he could talk about winning schools, as he labeled them, like Bama, Clemson, and all the rest of that, and it being hard for them to get on the field. Hell, some of the guys that we recruited haven't seen the field this year.
Yeah. So, no, you're right. You're right. But you're not. That's the thing about it. You're not going to see the field as a freshman like that. I mean, the good thing for Jimbo is he technically can play a whole bunch of freshmen, specifically because his job's guaranteed. He ain't going nowhere. They can't afford it. I will take this to the grave. I will continue to say this over and over. A&M's not going to want to come up with $200 million to get rid of this coach. Y'all think that I'm saying just $200 million for him? No, they got to pay him, and the next person's going to want the same job. They want the same check. I would not go to A&M for less than 12 a year, if not 15. I mean, just don't be dumb.
I'll be honest with you. You know what would cure this whole situation right now? Is if they can get a damn quarterback in there.
And you know what's bad about that is that they've gotten some highly touted quarterbacks and recruits, but it still doesn't seem to work.
Now, if you're Malachi Nelson, you're sitting there thinking, okay, 15 mil, I want that, but I also want to make money after this as well. I want to make that type of money after. I mean, obviously, you see what Link is doing with the continued progress of Caleb Williams. Right. So it's kind of hard, because Jimbo was an offensive guru a few years ago. Maybe I'm misspeaking, but a lot of people have him.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. I'm just saying, but now that it seems like that reputation is a bit tarnished now. In my opinion.
I think the problem is it's just poor development. It looks like poor development. Like the defensive side, those dudes are just natural talents. That's why they go pro. Like, I mean, that's why guys like, Myles Garrett, even though he's under the Kevin Sumlin regime, but guys like that, they show up to this school and they just dominate and go to the pro regardless, just because they're naturally just good. And going off of just natural athleticism, I'll put it like this. That's what our OU defense did the first 3 games of this season, and Nebraska game, and Kent State, and UTEP. They just played off athleticism. and they just played off of just natural ability. But then when you get more complex and that gets exposed, you can throw people off easily, and that's what it looks like. They look undisciplined, 100%. And so we don't know everything that's going on, but there's a lot of problems that's going on there. But like, yeah, we talked about this. Why go somewhere that's winning? You may have to sit. I mean, you can do that and still go pro in a system like they have at like Alabama. And then Robert Black, this is a good one. If you can't win with the best team and money can buy, it's the coach. Exactly. It's all development and coaching. It's 100% there. And you're right. Haynes King was supposed to be that dude. I mentioned that before. Him and the kid behind him, was it Wagner?
Max Johnson. Max Johnson and then the Weigman kid.
Yeah, Weigman. That's what it is. Weigman. I'm sorry. I didn't go look up his name, but he's supposed to be something special too, but I don't know.
Well, I
don't think this is going to work.
Here's the thing. It's unfair for us to really say all of that because we saw, at this point in time, because everybody saw that, or you should have saw that spring game. Come on, man.
Yeah. And then I asked some people in another group chat I've been with some Sooners, when I asked them serious question. There's players with character issues. Supposedly, there's a lot of that. Supposedly, they were smoking weed in the visiting locker room, and they got busted for it, and they're supposedly suspended or whatnot. That's some supposed. Like I said, this is all rumors. I'm not sure. I can't find any confirmation. We'll find out soon. But all of the Reddits and stuff are talking about it. But if these players do have these character issues, do you want them on your team? Even with them being super talented, do you want to deal with that? Do you want to have that potential headache?
Well, you see guys all the time. You see teams all the time that walk away from guys. I think Alabama would have gotten, what is the wide receiver that was playing at Georgia? Pickens, George Pickens. I think the word was that Bama backed off of him because of some of the character issues. You saw some of it kind of poke through. They go back to that Georgia Tech game that they played when he got into that scuffle and all the rest of it. Like you saw, and then I forgot what game it was when he squirted the water at a guy and stuff. Like you saw some of that stuff butt his head out, but he was able to mature over time. And hell, he's balling out. He's that guy, right? But sometimes, I don't know. You have some of these guys with these character issues. It's just all about your program. You're trying to get the best talent, and you think that what you have installed at your program as far as the off the field personnel, you feel like you have enough to keep those guys in check. I think, a kid like a Jai Hall. Jai Hall had a lot of character issues on and off the field or whatnot. So he always had that cloud. I didn't really know that until I was talked to one of our friends, and he was telling me about the situation. It's just one of those things where I don't know. Do you fill the room with a bunch of character issue guys, or do you kind of are you selective? And I think it's hard to say that because you want to get the best talent possible to fill the room. That way you can keep feeding. You can keep fielding a really, really good squad. This team, go ahead.
I'll say, I'm sorry. Who was it? It was somebody. I think it was one of the Seahawks that was part of the Legion of Boom. I can't think of which one it was, but I remember them saying something about, let me come like this point, like same problem happens in the pros. Guys get harder to coach once they start getting paid. And these guys with the character issues. And you're right. That's the one thing I wanted you to distinguish. I remember somebody with the Seahawks, with the Legion of Boom, mentioning that you got to have a goon or two on your team if you want to win in this league, if you want to be successful long-term in the NFL. And I honestly think the same thing about college. I think that the goony guys, the potential character issue dudes, you surround them with the right guys to help them stay in line, help them be focused, and let them just be goons on the field.
Yeah,
it can work. And paying them, I don't think that that's really where the problem comes in for these kids. I don't think the paying is the issue. You don't really hear about that. It legitimately, really, to me, is the coaching. It's the coaching, the development, the relationships. Because, NIL's everywhere, and it seems like this is the only team that's having like really bad issues. Texas is playing their players, but they're Texas. They're going to do what they're doing. But all these other schools are also paying their players at large. Georgia had a lot of Jordan Davis, and a lot of those players there were getting really big NIL deals, and they were just fine.
Well, look, so like I said, you fill the room with the most talent, no matter what.
Right.
But you gotta like Nick Saban. What does Nick Saban have for his team? He has a freaking counselor there. I mean,
Yeah.
somebody literally they can go a certified counselor who can go there and they can just talk to them about whatever's going on in their life to help them work through those problems and try to avoid as much mental issues with mental health as possible, right? You have the Soul Mission. I'm sure they have something like that up there in Clemson. They have all these different things where these players can get all the help that they need
Yep.
to be able to process some of these things and be able to stay away from from making these boneheaded decisions, right? It's just not everywhere, and you kind of have to question what kind of structure do you have inside of that program that's keeping these kids from doing that. What incentive are you giving these players, these kids, to basically say, hey, look, you don't have to do any of this stuff. You're perfectly fine. You already know we're going to have to, you know what I'm saying? So
right.
It's just one
like
of those things where, and it doesn't matter because I think that, because didn't the NCAA, they instituted some things, they instituted a rule this past summer about like the transfer portal or whatever, where a lot of with recruiting violations or whatnot. So like if it falls on on like an assistant coach, it's gonna go to the head of it, right? The head of the
go
table.
to the whole staff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things where this just literally looks bad on Jimbo. Like he can't run a ship by himself, right? Because you're trying to figure out what at Florida State did he have that was keeping him from having the same problems.
Right. No, that's a good point. And like, and Jonathan, what's going on, my man? Thank you for pulling up. He says Alabama requires all NIL deals. They got to use the university set up in-house counsel. I mean, that's good. And then just having counselors in general to talk to the players about just life in general on top of the money piece. And I think and I don't want to go too far into a rant about NIL and paying the players and why I'm a huge advocate for it, because the one thing I've heard Mike Golick Jr. say this before on his podcast a while back, and it stuck with me. Actually, he tweeted it out and it stuck with me, that this is the best place for college students to get, especially these athletes, to get paid, because it's a controlled environment and they can actually learn money skills in college. Like the whole point of being a leader of men is to lead these men. So why can't these coaches lead these men and help them with financial literacy and all of that stuff in a controlled environment? It doesn't make any sense if any coach complains about it, because it's like, but this is what you're paid to do. You're paid to lead men. All coaches say they're leaders of men, and they don't say it just on the football field. They say in life. And if that's your play, if that's your statement, I need you to show me leading them off the field too. Do it financially. Financial literacy is another big deal. But outside of that, Jimbo Fisher and them, they're just struggling. He probably will leave them worse than he did at Florida State, because Florida State was bad. Like that whole situation just looked awful, and I felt bad for Willie Taggart, even though he got paid to go away as well. It was just bad in general when he walked in, specifically with that. So, all right, we're gonna get off of this bashing of A&M, even though I think it's quite hilarious and I love everything. So, I have a theory. I have a theory for you, Kchris and audience. I want you guys to tell me what you think. Now, it's all over the place, but I'm going to bring it in, and I want you to tell me what you think. I think all Sooner fans and everyone should really be keeping an eye to what's going on at Tennessee. This is why I say that. Not only because Josh Heupel was a former OU quarterback, but the way things are going for them this year, I feel like will be replicated by Oklahoma. And this is why. So, it took Tennessee only a year to really figure things out and go. Now, when Heupel got there was a mass exodus of players leaving that school. They had 35 transfers his first year there, from September 20 to July of 21. 35. Now, we talked about this in Oklahoma terms and how we lost a good 40% of our players because of either graduating, going to the pros, or transferring. We lost about 15 players leaving. The average in the SEC that year, because that was the big year for transferring and everything, and then the super seniors or whatnot, was like 12. So Tennessee like almost tripled it. And how many players that Heupel left right when he started working there. And so looking at the recruiting classes, Tennessee wasn't really putting together much that special. Pruitt's 3 years there, basically, he had ranked 21 class, 2019 class, 2018 class was 21st, 2019 class was 13th, and his 2020 class was 11th. And then when Hypo got there, his 2021 class was 22nd, and his 22 class was only 17th. But what did he do? What did the administration do? What did the school do? They said, be patient. Let him get the guys that he wants, and they'll do something. And so you notice in the classes that Tennessee brought in, heavy on the offensive side, heavy on the types of fast guys that Hypo likes for the up-tempo offense he's running. This is why I think that OU fans should really pay attention to how Hypo's doing things and expect something similar here. We look at our class this year. We've got a ton of defensive players. Like it's about a 60-40 ratio, and that's not common for us here at Oklahoma. It's usually the opposite direction, or more 75-25, because of the type of offenses that Riley was running. If Venables after 2 classes continues to get these defensive guys that he wants, and Levy's able to get, like you said, the fast receiver, the receiver that can that's a possession guy, and then putting in like Evers or Jackson Arnold throwing that ball, or even Dylan Gabriel coming back next year, which I think is a possibility.
Yep.
There's a great chance that this team will be able to take 2 Big 12 championships before we move over to the SEC. Am I crazy in thinking about that?
That's not a theory. That's factual. I mean, because look, the other sample size that you can look, the other sample or example that you can go to is Ole Miss. Look at what Ole Miss did the first few years that they were there. They were middle of the road, middle of the line, and then boom, all of a sudden it was on and popping, right? And you see what they're doing now, right? So the whole thing is that the K-State game, you're a few plays away from winning that game, right? TCU, Texas, those were anomalies in itself, right? But when it comes to that K-State game, you were just a few plays defensively and offensively from winning that game, you know? So it wasn't like you went out there and you got beat. You definitely saw some of the sloppiness, the lack of execution, and the lack of attention to detail. But at the same time, you beat yourself more in that K-State game than anything, okay? Yeah. But like I said, the improvement is going to be key. And even when those new guys, PJ and all the rest of them come in, you're still going to have to give them time. You're just hoping that, hey, with another year under their belt, can this defense, because you're going to see, I don't think you're going to see a mass exodus, but I do think you're going to see some guys obviously go off from, you're going to see maybe 1 or 2 guys possibly enter their name in the draft. I think the key thing is, can you keep Mims and can you keep Gabriel? I think Gabriel is obviously the guy that you can keep. You're going to be losing your Braden Willis, who's, I mean, to be honest with you, he's probably our best player on this team right now, or he's played the best. But at the same time, next year, you should be able to improve. Agwebu and Stutzman should have that position down, the linebacker position down. You should be able to see a Kobe McKenzie and possibly a Kip Lewis or whatever be able to get on the field alongside with a Kanik as well. You should see a lot of those guys be able to rotate in and out and be able to do some things. Defensive line should be really nasty next year. You should see them be able to actually be multiple instead of coming out here and having to run either a 4-man set or the 3-3-5, right? So, I mean, I think looking forward with what BV is trying to do, because one of the things you got to remember about this defense, and we haven't really seen those guys. I mean, coming in to the season, I thought Stripling could be that guy who could possibly be that freak on that defensive line or around that defensive
Stripling
line.
was the dude that I looked at too as the dude that I think was going to really step up, him and Bowman, because Ty really talked about Bowman. I thought Stripling, but he's been hurt, and I think
he's been hurt. But that's the whole thing. But when you look at this defense, I watched the JD Piquel. Okay, before he was on 3, he broke down that Clemson defense, and he was showing you some of the different things that they do. It's multiple for a reason, because there's freaks at different key positions, especially that cheetah role, right? And when I say freaks, I'm talking about some gifted freaks. I mean, he's having 300-pound defensive linemen do some dropbacks, and they're able to be successful at it. But that's just the type of athletic guys that he
You
recruits.
have to have for
And
that set. You're right.
he's had those guys. And so it's going to take us some time. But once we build that depth here and we build that camaraderie, we get those type of recruits or whatnot, we're going to be just fine with whatever scheme that we're running.
Okay.
And offensively, like I said, I just think that Levy's approach to it is going to work. Just got to be that much more patient to see this payoff.
No, I agree, and I think that piece, like right here coming in, you know, like Hank's mentioning a lefty transfer returning for year 2. Hell yeah, I'm all in for it. And Jonathan makes a great point here. Bringing in QBs from another school that they're really high on before with their systems. That's exactly what we've got. And Levy's system is way more complex than what Riley was doing here, and that's just facts. A lot of people talk about. I've heard a lot of talking heads break it down and the complexities of it. It's a really good system that Riley does, and it's very complex for defenses, but his wide receivers and quarterbacks is not, which is awesome. But this is exactly why I mentioned that, and I talked about paying attention to Tennessee and how they're doing it, because I do see the similarities 100% because of the way that the with the new AD at Tennessee now and the way that Oklahoma's always been ran, they're run a hell of a lot better than they used to. And I think the benefit that Tennessee has a little bit more than what Oklahoma has is that Heupel was a head coach for a year before. For a couple years before taking that job. So he has a little bit more experience, and he was able to figure out the mistakes and everything as all first-year head coaches make or whatnot. So let's jump into some of these comments and answer some of these questions here. Primetime is asking about the D-line and Grimes not getting sacks. I don't know what's going on with him. Do we need to put him on a milk carton or something? Like, what's up with Grimes? He has been quiet. I don't think I've seen anything about injuries or anything, but
I mean, he's been quiet. Redmond has been quiet. Dylan Grimes, for goodness sake, that's who you should put on a milk carton. I definitely look to see some of those guys possibly be moved inside next year. But for now, I mean, it would be nice if we could get that pass rush going.
No, I agree, and that's kind of one that I'm hoping that we get more pressure, especially on Iowa State. This is an opportunity to really get pressure. Tackles for loss are great, and Venable's system is built great to get you those. If you haven't noticed, we're in the top 10 in tackles for loss this year. Our problem is third down conversions. We give them up too often. We need those tackles for losses on third down, which usually is because you got a sack. So that's what we need, or knockdowns. Another question here from Jimmy. Should we get an experienced linebacker or defensive lineman from the portal? You know, that's a good question. I did see from OU Insider, Parker Thune mentioned that a defensive lineman from Notre Dame is coming to the game on the 5th to be recruited. Let me find out the name for you all really quickly while we're sitting here, but I don't think that that's a bad idea. I think that's something that we probably should, I guess you could say, start looking at.
That's something that you'll look at. I mean, especially with the amount of names that we think are going to come from Texas A&M, that's definitely something that you should possibly look at.
I mean, I would love for us to be able to steal some of their guys. I just don't see them really losing very many players, even as bad as things are. It just doesn't feel like it. So here it is. Transfer defensive lineman coming in. It is Jacob Lacey. He's at Notre Dame. He's a senior. I'll pull up his profile, and I'm actually, you know what? I'm going to see if I can figure
He's already entered the portal?
Yeah, he entered the portal before the deadline, so he's actually available. Let me see if I share and present my screen what happens. I'm kind of curious. Not that one. Let me move you over to this screen. Let's see what happens. Let me share it. We're going to go into the shared screen look. Boom! That's good. This is the player that supposedly is looking at Oklahoma and showing up for the game on the 5th. He entered the transfer portal. He's a senior, 6'2", 285. He's initially he's crystal ball to go to Kentucky, but the rumor is that he's coming to visit do an official visit at Oklahoma. And he entered the transfer portal on the 9th, so he won't play this year. And as you can see from his note here on the tweet side, he's bounced. So the question is that will he come here and will he play next year? Because he'll probably have to be a super senior. So 4-star, he's third in the state of Kentucky, 15th defensive tackle, and he's a top 200 player. I don't know how I feel about it, but we'll see. But we probably should start looking at some other players. We got my boy Matt in here. He wants to talk noise. Iowa State 20, OU 17. I think that's pretty funny. I appreciate you coming in and trolling us. It's always great to have fans in with that. Hank mentions about Kanik and Lewis on the field at the same time. I'm sold.
No, Kip Lewis made a lot of plays in that. In that, what game was that? The spring game. I think.
Oh, spring game too. It's Texas.
Yeah, he just got to put on some more weight. Other than that, I think he's really instinctive and he's fast around out there. I'm excited for him and to see Kobe McKenzie as well. I think you're gonna see a lot of them next year, hopefully.
Same. I'm hoping we see a lot of him. I do want to see some Kobe McKenzie, but I kind of want him to stay redshirted because I want him for like 4 straight years where he's actually starting. Because I think if he redshirts this year, he starts next season. And then he has 3 years to 4 years of starting. If we play him some this year, we'll only get him for like 2 years and he's going to bounce. Because, he may actually, bounce after 2 years regardless, but I do want him to be like a starting freshman for the team. All right, I think with that, we're going to wrap this bad boy up. We're at the 1 hour mark. Thank you all for tuning in here on Unfair Sports. Kchris, let the people know where they can find you.
Obviously, guys, again, at Kchris with a K. You can find us at the Horns Down Pod on Twitter. Then you can find us on YouTube, the Horns Down Podcast. You can find us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts at. Like, subscribe, follow. Definitely check out our content. You won't regret it.
Yeah, hit the like and subscribe button, share because sharing is caring. I think I'm going to try to do these on Wednesdays. I think this is going to be my day to get a live stream up for you all. Bring in some folks, bring in Chris on a regular basis. We could chop it up in preparation for the next week. So with that, I'll have some videos later this week. Probably one more preview for this game and some of the 5 things that I think we should look out for when this game comes up. And with that, we will chop it up with all of y'all in a few days. Peace.